Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So inshallah tonight, Moroccan family night. So the lecture will just be on basically the history of Morocco and Islam and how those two intertwine. Um, just gonna go over briefly what we're gonna go through. So first it'll just be what Morocco was before Islam, when Islam came in the 7th to 8th century, the dynasties that came after it, Morocco on a global stage, and then some lessons that we can learn from it, inshallah. I learned a lot from this when doing all the research for this, so inshallah, it's going to serve as a good reminder for all of us. So, ancient Morocco, so as long as, I guess archaeologists can tell the Amazigh, the Berber people, have called this land home for thousands of years, long before the Roman Empire and the Islamic Empire came. And they're organized into many different tribes and civilizations across the Rif and Atlas Mountains, along the coastline, and even in the edge of the Sahara. This is similar to a lot of ancient civilizations that would inhabit areas that were close to the water. The Amazigh language, Amazigh, is a language and a culture that's still alive today. Many of the words that we use in Darija, the Moroccan Arabic, comes directly from Amazigh, words like mush, cat, and salut or salut, keep. And quick little fun fact is that one of the ancient kings, Jabal II of the Mauritania Empire, was a scholar king, and his wife, Cleopatra Selene II, was the daughter of Cleopatra of Egypt, which connects to the previous Egyptian family name. Here we have the flag of the ethnic flag of the Amazigh people. The blue, I'm pretty sure, represents like the water, so the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. The green is like the land and the valleys. The yellow represents like sand and the dunes and this desert. And then the red represents basically like their lineage and basically the resistance and the martyrs that have come. And this letter here, correct me if I'm wrong, Tifinat, is like the letter Z in the alphabet, and it just represents the Amazigh people in general. So throughout times, obviously, way back, there were just simple agricultural societies, but later on, they became part of the Phoenician colonies, the Carthaginian Empire, the Kingdom of Mauritania, which we mentioned before, and then later it was absorbed by the Roman and Byzantine empires. You can see the timeline here. 1100 BC was the Phoenicians, around 146 BCE, so before Isa alayhi salam, the Romans, and then around 5th century was the Byzantines. And here we can see the map of territory of the Mauritanian Empire, which is not to be confused with modern day Mauritania today. So, Islam arriving. So it only took a couple of decades after Prophet ﷺ passed away before Islam started spreading to North Africa. It was General Uqba ibn Afi, not to be confused with Uqba ibn Rafi who led the Muslim forces of the Umayyad Caliphate as far west as the Atlantic Ocean in about a decade. And he founded the city of Kairouan, as a base for the growing Muslim population. And the city of Kairouan is founded today in modern-day Tunisia. After him was Hassan ibn al-Numan, who captured Carthage, and then after him was Musa ibn Nusayr, who captured Ceuta in 709, and that basically erased the Byzantine control at that time. Which was interesting was when Uqba ibn Nafi, rahimahullah, when he reached the Atlantic, he made a dua, or he made a declaration that was narrated that he said, "Oh Allah, if the sea had not stopped me, I would have pressed on forever, upholding your faith." And Bismillah, maybe Allah had rewarded him for all the Muslims that were to come after him in the Maghreb area and Al-Andalus and even across the Atlantic Ocean. So, like any other territory, when it's getting conquered, there was resistance. One of the most famous was from a queen that led the Amazigh people, the Berbers, Al-Kahina or Dihya. And this was like one of like the biggest resistance at the time. When Khalifa Umar ibn Abdulaziz, Umar II, when they finally captured the area, he sent a delegation of 10 scholars from the Tabi'in, and he appointed his governor Ismail ibn Ubaydullah, and he basically enacted policies that were fair and not discriminatory against the Amazigh people. And at this time, this would mark the time when a lot of the Berbers would accept Islam at this time. And this was the first non-Arab group to convert on such a mass scale. Little lessons that can be learned from this is that true faith cannot be forced. And whenever any subsequent leaders came after that, so any of the rulers after Ismail ibn Ubaydullah, the rulers that came after them, sometimes they would deviate from the initial policies, and they would put a jizya on the citizens or the subject, the people who were living there, who were the Berbers, who were non-Arab, and they would give them a jizya, even though they're a Muslim. And this would cause backlashes and revolts and resistance. But whenever they reverted back to a fair system, that didn't happen. So a lot of us may know the story. Sheikh Fahid likes to say it a lot. But at around 711 CE, the general Tariq ibn Ziyad crossed from Morocco to Spain and Andalus, and this is where he did it. Today it's known as Jabal Tariq. Well, at the time it was known as Jabal Tariq, but today we now know it as the Spanish washed version of Gibraltar.
Which is a relation of Jabal Tariq.
Yeah, which is a Spanish derived name for Jabal Tariq, which means Tariq's mountain or Tariq's rock. And this would basically start what would become an Andalus at the time. And a lot of people don't know, or they try to disregard it, but a lot of what came from the Islamic Empire at that time helped bring a lot of the European nations and kingdoms out of the Dark Ages into what we know now as the Renaissance. So some of the Islamic dynasties that came after, first was after the Umayyad Caliphate had lost control in the area due to the Khawarij-led Amazigh revolts, and that started around 739 CE. They lost control, so they didn't have too much control over it for too long. And at around 788 CE, Idris ibn Abdullah, who was a great-grandson of the Prophet ﷺ, his father being Hassan al-Gawan, fled persecution in Arabia from the Abbasids, and he came to Morocco. He was welcomed by the Awraba tribe, and he founded Morocco's first independent Islamic state. So they were associated with the Arabian Islamic state. And this was founded near the Roman ruins of Ulubilis. And his son Idris II would go on to find their capital, the city of Fez, which would be known as a very historic and ancient city. This started what we know now as the Sharifan tradition, which was when basically the ruler of that dynasty or that empire would tie their lineage back to the Prophet ﷺ. So Fez is a very interesting city. What's one of the biggest things that it's known for historically today was Qarawiyyin, the University of Qarawiyyin and Fez. And this was founded by a woman, Fatima al-Fadri, using her family's inheritance. Qarawiyyin just means the people of Qirwan, which you mentioned before, is where her family came from and migrated to Fez. So today it's almost unanimously said that it's recognized as one of the oldest continuously operating degree-granting universities. So, of course, there was universities that existed before this time, but this university is the oldest active university today. And it's even has one of the world's oldest documented medical degrees, or ijaza, which is like a mastery in the medical science, which is found in 1207 CE to a doctor named Abdullah bin Saleh al-Qutni. And this is basically a picture from the outside of what everything looks like. And this picture actually here was one I visited there 3 years ago. This was one of the dorm rooms a student would live in. And basically you can see the bed here, and this area would just be used for independent study and have this window. So shortly after the death of the empire, it's all empires have rises and falls. Uprisings from the Miknasa and Nagrawa, Berber people, the Amazigh, and later on the Almoravids would found Marrakesh and unite Morocco into one territory. Later they would then cross into Spain and help the Andalusian Muslims who were still there from the Christian kingdoms who were starting to revive and fight back against them. The Almohads would then succeed the Almoravids, all of these empires being Amazic, and they built the Qutubiyya Mosque in Marrakesh, that's still prayed into today, and built another masjid in Giralda Seville, Spain. So here was the territory of the Almoravids, and here was the territory of the Almohads. So at this time, once the Idrisid Empire fell, that the ruler was no longer having the tradition, the Sharif tradition of having their lineage back to the Prophet ﷺ. Now they were ruled by the Amazic people. And here we see the masjid that was founded. And this was the masjid that was in Seville, Spain, the Giralda, but had been turned into a cathedral. You can see here like the minaret was also changed throughout time. You can see the timeline when the Almoravids, when the Almohads came. So yeah, and around like the 12th, 13th centuries, 14th centuries, the trans-Saharan caravan routes linked Morocco to many of the great empires that were existing at the time. West Africa, East Africa, and Arabia. At this time, a lot of information and goods were exchanged. Scholars would go from city to city to exchange knowledge and to exchange ideas. And at this time also, the legendary story of Mansa Musa, happened where he migrated all the way from the Mali Empire in Niana, I think, all the way to Mecca for his Hajj. So after the Almohad dynasty was the Merenid dynasty. This is still Amazic people, founded by the Zenata Berbers, and they would build a lot of madrasas all across Morocco and have Fez as a beacon of Islamic scholarship. Two actually legendary figures were born at this time. Ibn Battuta, which is probably one of the most famous Moroccans of all time. He was well known for his travels. At the age of 21, he traveled for 30 years. It's said to be around 75,000 miles. And he journeyed across Africa, Middle East, Central Asia, and even all the way into China. And another figure that would be born around the peak of this dynasty, and he would also see the decline, was Ibn Khaldun, rahimahullah. So here we see basically Ibn Battu's his routes that he took. The first one being the red one here, going all the way to Mecca and Medina, and all around the Middle East, and then going from the green route here all the way Eastern Africa, and then all across South and Central Asia here, all the way to East Asia, and back to Western Africa. So in 1492, Al-Andalus would fall. The last Muslim empire or kingdom at the time was the Kingdom of Granada, and it would fall due to the Reconquista that would happen, which was basically a claim of the European people revitalizing their Christian history. At that time when Al-Andalus fell, or the Kingdom of Granada fell, many Muslim and Jewish families had to flee because either they were to convert to Christianity or they would be killed. And many of them resettled in cities like Fez, Tetuan, Rabat, and they would bring along the Andalusian cuisine and culture with them. Which is also interesting, though, in 1492 was also the year that Christopher Columbus had reached the Americas. So this year was important in many ways than just one. After that, in 1578, a battle that took place, so let me backtrack. So at this point, so the Merenid dynasty was in rule, and they would have ended in 1465 CE, they fell. During that time of the dynasty, there were Banu Halal Arabs that were migrating to the next region, but the territory was still under Messic rule. Later, they would establish the Saudi Sultanate after the Marinid dynasty fell in 510, and this was to ward off any of the Portuguese forces that were to come. One of the more historic battles was called the Battle of the Three Kings that happened in 1578. And this is where, this is called the Battle of the Three Kings because three potential kings died. One was Portugal's King Sebastian, and two of the heirs of the Moroccan throne. After this happened, Spain would absorb Portugal for the next 60 years. But when the Saudi Sultanate was founded, it did not join with the Ottoman Empire. It was still its own separate state. You can see that here. So, with the Saudi Sultanate that had started, before we talked about the Sharifan tradition, which started with the Idrisids. So, just to recap, the son of Hassan Ilan, who was a grandson of the Prophet, his son, Idris ibn Abdullah, founded the dynasty, which was the Idrisid dynasty. And his family ruled for a couple of years. And then after that, the Amazigh people ruled for 900 years. And then after that, the Arabs that would come back and claim lineage back to the Prophet took over from the Saudi Sultanate and then from the Alawites. And the Alawite Sultanate succeeded the Saudi in 1666, and this is the dynasty that would remain until today. So it's kind of interesting that it went from a dynasty, an empire or a nation that was the ruler had their lineage back to the Prophet, and then it went back to the Amazigh people leading at the time, and then went back to the ruler claiming descent from the Prophet. So later on, a lot of us know about the Americas in 1776, when the United States declared independence from Britain. It was Morocco who was the first country to recognize them in 1777, and they would basically, they were the first ones to recognize their independence, but they would also provide safety for their ships that would come over to that Gibraltar Strait or Mediterranean area. In 1786, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship between the two nations was formed, and this is the longest unbroken treaty in U.S. history. You can see it on the right. And then later on, I missed one part, but so when the Alawi dynasty was founded, this was their flag. It's pretty simple, just red. But it later on changed in 1918, and we'll get to that. So yeah, in 1912, some of us may be familiar with a lot of the European colonial powers in the mid-1800s basically deciding to carve out Africa. It was called the Race for Africa. And Morocco fell victim to this in 1912 when they came under French and Spanish rule and lost its full independence for the first time in over 1,000 years. There was resistance by the Karim Khatabi. He led the Amazigh, the Rifians, in the 1920s, and many of his guerrilla tactics were studied at that time and still till today. These were the casualties that happened, but eventually the resistance was suppressed in 1927, but the fight would still continue. So, back to the flag. The Alawi adopted this new flag, which is just red with a star. The green star basically represents it's called the Star of Suleiman, but it represents the 5 pillars of Islam, 5 different points. And then the red just represents the lineage and that the Alawi were prideful of back to the Prophet. During French rule, this was the flag here. And during Spanish rule, this was the flag here. So for the French territories, they use this one. Spanish territories, they use this one. And the Rif Amazigh used this flag to represent themselves. So World War II. So at this time, when World War II was happening, Morocco was still under French and Spanish rule, but it was used as a Casablanca or Dalbeida was used as a area for many of the top rulers to meet and discuss what was going to happen. Many famous rulers such as Franklin Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, Charles de Gaulle, they met in Casablanca for 4 days, and this is where they basically agreed for the Allies to basically, they wanted the unconditional surrender of the Axis powers. So the Axis powers were Nazis and their allies. This is where they decided that. We see throughout history, Moroccan soil has been has hosted history's most powerful wartime leaders and is at the crossroads of many of the different world events, from the fall of Andalus to the Treaty with the United States and so on. So we get into modern day Morocco. While it was still under French and Spanish rule, the Istiklal Party the Independence Party was founded, and it had discrete U.S. support. So the United States was supporting them, but not outwardly, because they were still allies to the French and the Spanish. But from this stemmed a lot of leadership and lobbying to the United Nations, and that, along with that, came resistance and riots, and eventually Morocco would gain its full independence in 1956. And Sultan Mohammed V became the king, and he's basically known as the father of modern independence of Morocco. After his death in 1961, this is still continuing the Alawi and the Sharifan tradition of holding the lineage back to the Prophet. King Hassan II came. He was known for many things, but one of the two notable ones was Hassan Thani, or Hassan II Mosque, which you can see here. But he also led what was known as the Green March, which is kind of similar to what Gandhi did in India, where he basically marched into the Western Sahara to get it away from Spanish rule. The Madrid Accords eventually would happen, and it would assign Morocco the northern 2/3 to rule, Mauritania the southern 1/3. But this land is still disputed till today, partially because Safawi people didn't really have any say in that Madrid Accords. After his death in 1999, King Mohammed VI came, and he still continues that line, and he holds the title of Amir Wahman, which is another disputed or controversial title. So just some lessons that we can learn from all of this. One is that faith endures political change. So I just ran through a bunch of different, thousands of years of history in a couple of minutes, but even through all these dynasties, Islam still remained at the heartbeat of Morocco. A lot of the knowledge was connected with deen and worship, from Qarawiyyin to Ibn Battuta to Ibn Khaldun, and that unity doesn't erase identity. Hasidic, Arab, Andalusian, Jewish, and Western backgrounds still exist in Morocco to today. And Allah says in Surah Al-Anfal, verse 46, obey Allah and His Messenger, and do not dispute with one another, or you would be discouraged and weakened. It's kind of interesting. A lot of people, sometimes when I tell people, if they were to see my extended family, they would think we're a foster family or foster care. Which is kind of true, because Morocco is very diverse, and just the way people, different backgrounds that come around, and just how we look in general. Another lesson is sincerity of intention that matters the most. We talked about the General Uqba ibn Nafi and his intention to keep conquering and to spread Islam as far as he could. And we see it here today. We're all talking about him right now across the Atlantic Ocean. And finally, another lesson is that justice is the currency of legitimacy. So throughout these rise and falls of the dynasties, we would see that the times when they were at their peak was one of the times when they were fair and they were just. Ibn Taymiyyah said that Allah upholds a just state even if it is a Muslim, and does not uphold an unjust state even if it is. The Quran commands justice and excellence in Surah Al-Nahl, verse 90, Prophet ﷺ mentioned that a just ruler is to be among the seven that Allah will shade on a day that on a day when He will shade no other. One other interesting fact about this was also a hadith narrated by Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. He said that the Prophet ﷺ said that the people of the West will remain established upon the truth until the hour comes. This is found in Muslim 1925. And some of the scholars debate exactly what the West means here. In the hadith, I'm pretty sure the term Maghrib was used, but some scholars understood it as Balad al-Sham, so the Levant area, like Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, which was directly west of Medina. And some scholars say that it included Sham and everything west of it, so Egypt, North Africa, Morocco, and Andalus, and possibly even west of the Atlantic Ocean. So a lot. And yeah, like today we call it, tonight is called, I guess, Moroccan Family Night, but it's not a matter of about pride or anything. It's just that it shows that Islam came for 5 reasons. The scholars mentioned that Islam came to protect 5 things. One of them being faith, life, intellect, property, and what we talk about today, lineage, which we can see was very cherished among the different dynasties. And in Islam, marriage, honest paternity, inheritance laws all exist to protect the person's right to know, and their right to be known by their true family line and heritage. So, like I said, over 1,200 years, different dynasties preserved their single sacred lineage back to the Prophet ﷺ, but it wasn't lineage alone that restored sovereignty. We mentioned Ibn Khaldun, and he's known for one of his greatest works, the Muqaddimah. And it was basically a theory, he basically theorized how dynasties would rise and fall. And his main theory was that they rose through Asabiyya, which was having a shared purpose, a sincere religious conviction, which inshallah we all have. And the fall came from when that cohesion would break, and it would dissolve into, due to luxury, factionalism, injustice, nationalism, whatever you want to call it. And this just reminds us of the hadith where Prophet ﷺ mentions how the Ummah will be today plentiful but fractured. And this is because of the dunya will cry to most, our love for the dunya and our fear or dislike for death. So just as Morocco's story was carried faithfully from generation to generation, inshallah, may your families carry forward what matters most with pride, but without arrogance. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم.
Takbir.